Hello, welcome to Brisfest. I'm opening up the stage. I'm going to do a short fiction set, and then I might be doing some more poetry later, I don't know, but that doesn't matter because there's some fantastic stuff coming up. I'm going to start with a story which is local, which is good. This is Brisfest. This story is called Jesus of Bristol. I can't remember anything, so I've got my words in front of me. It goes like this. Jesus used to live in St. Werburgh's at the junction of a ley line and an underground river. One day in the chip shop queue, he met a woman passing a plain old ring from finger to finger. She had dreadlocks and tresses. She wore clothes made cunningly from brilliant rags. She had a proud, bony face which caught the light. She was shaking. She had forgotten her purse, so Jesus bought her chips. When she told him she hated vinegar, he offered her his own. "Let me walk with you for a while," said Jesus. But the woman was an introvert, so she thanked him for the chips and told him she was going through a lot and would very much like to be left alone, if he didn't mind. Jesus acknowledged his fault and beat a hasty retreat. Afterwards he thought, when I try to give, do I just take? He went to one of the dozen Buddhist centres on Gloucester Road for an answer. In the lobby he met a man with a voice as soft and unctuous as unsalted butter, who extended a saffron wing and folded it around him. The man said, "You need to give because you have told yourself you are the giver. It is your ego. It has become a compulsion. Let go of your stories and live." Jesus was grateful to the man for offering the one thing he had to give, so he gave it a go. It didn't go well. You shouldn't forget yourself if you are God in man. It does crazy things to the weather and you get terrible dreams. It was because of these dreams that Jesus went to see the psychoanalyst. The psychoanalyst asked Jesus about his father. There was no stopping Jesus on that one. He talked for hours and impressively in surround sound. The analyst, who was a Freudian, licked his lips with the driest of dry tongues and took copious notes, and then he said, "Tell me about your mother." And Jesus began to cry, very softly. Thank you. I'm going to respond with swearing. Can I respond with swearing? Excellent. This is called shitbread. He was just going on and on about how everything in England is shit. The weather, the people, even the beer. Kept talking crap about what we think about ourselves like he knows, and I was getting angrier and trying to find a way of saying fuck off back to France, but in a way I'd feel good about afterwards. Then he starts talking about bread, and I start agreeing, because although I didn't like the rest of what the guy was saying, you can't argue that the bread in England isn't shit, because it is shit. It's total shit. It isn't bread, it isn't even food. Even the stuff they sell you in the supermarket that isn't sliced and has a crust on it. That's shit too, just shit with more air in it. And the stuff they call artisan bread, which costs £2.50 for a small loaf and is full of fucking tomatoes and enough oil to fly 500 pink and purple Brits to Orlando to shake hands with Mickey fucking Mouse and get shot for mooning in a bar, sticking their sunburnt arse in a couple of cops in the middle of someone's drug deal. That stuff is shit too. And I'm saying this to the French guy, and he looks surprised and says sorry, like he's just mentioned crazy grandmas, the day your crazy grandma wanders into a rendering plant and doesn't come back. And he starts telling me everything shit about France, which seems to boil down to the fact that you only have a life if you're over 50 or work for the government and the whole place is up itself. And the next thing you know, we're laughing. And I buy him some proper good ale from the Bell where they know how to keep it, and he agrees it's not half bad, and we're best mates, and he's leaving tomorrow. And he gives me his address and says, if you're ever near where I live, blah, 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 and it's very nice. We've been drinking too much. We need some food, so we stop at the pizza place, but we instantly regret it. It's so hot in there. But eventually we get our pizzas, and it's like all the salt in the world turned into gloop and poured onto cardboard, and I eat mine in about 20 seconds, and he hardly touches his, and he says, "What do you think about the pizza?" And I say, "Don't get me started." This one is called, "This is about you." This is about you, not about anyone else. Lesson there. The monk is in his cell, more comfortable than you might imagine. There is nothing here that isn't for writing or sleeping, but the gardens are made against all expectation for the senses. It is June, And at the window, everything speaks of life, of fertility. Where there is silence, there is silence. Elsewhere, there is quiet industry, sometimes laughter. We are not the same, he and I. This morning, as most mornings, he is copying the New Testament. It is a life's work. This morning, I Instagrammed my breakfast. It was a special breakfast. My friend, the one who had remained aloof from the arguments of the night before, had suffered for it, breaking a peppermill and losing, temporarily, the composure we had admired a few hours earlier. I wanted the world to read my tribute. In spite of everything, that scrambled egg was good. I don't explain this to the monk. The thing I tell him is a thing I had almost forgotten, something medieval from my own life. A fortune teller once told me that I was dead, but it was possible I would start living again. It's true that if you look at my lifeline, the middle third is missing. I told her that everyone imagines themselves suspended between what's gone and what's to come. But what I really think is that the present is a point in time, infinitesimally small. You cannot squeeze yourself in there. It's just a fantasy. What she said was, this is about you, not about anyone else. The monk looks at me very mildly. They practice that look, it doesn't mean anything. He tells me when he was a boy, fortune tellers would accost strangers even in churches, the old woman and her several sons. Once you had your hand, it was dangerous to take it back or refuse payment. The devil loves kindness, he said. The devil loves kindness, but then everyone loves kindness. It is terrible to know the future, he says. He's right. What I know of his future is terrible. I know that plague is coming. I also know that the golden age of the illuminated manuscript is past. In just over a century, the principle of movable type will be applied to a phonetic alphabet with spectacular results. A century after that, the monasteries will be dissolved. The next 100 years will be hell. After that, the future begins with Gutenberg and ends with my breakfast on Facebook. There are butterflies at the window. Inside there is shade and peace. There is the secret worldliness, the solitude in every heart, the patient scratch of his calligraphy. Of all the sounds I have heard none so clearly. This is called The Perfect Heart. On his death, in accordance with his instructions, Edgar Evans' heart was preserved in a glass case with a card. The card read, "This is a perfect heart. It has never been used." It was displayed in a disused fireplace in his favourite cafe. Flowers and cards appeared. The cafe owner opened a book. People came from around the world. Soon the book was full of stories of other perfect, unused hearts. Most of them missed the point, or rather, made their own. Edgar had not been a pleasant man. He left a book of his own describing the selfish things loneliness had prompted him to do. The unacknowledged trades of sex for comfort or shelter, his neglect of his parents and his son, the spiteful libels disseminated with the rage of the unrequited, his brusqueness and self-absorption. This book was placed, again according to his instructions, on a shelf of unread books in the same cafe, a few feet from the heart. The book was not noticed for several months, by which time The Perfect Heart was both famous and, owing to the crudeness of the embalming technique, unrecognizable as a heart. It was all headline news. The film rights were in great demand and the courts pondered whose they were to sell. A picture of the rotting heart, covered in flies, appeared on the cover of Time magazine, the true character of a secular saint. The decomposing organ was sold at auction to a private collector, but its disappearance from view did not create an ending. A sketch of it in its case had become a popular icon. It appeared on t-shirts and millions of posters were printed. A young man in Colorado papered the walls of his condominium with the image before dying in an attempt to remove his own heart with a kitchen knife. The United States Senate debated the criminalization of art deemed likely to cause or perpetuate suicidal thoughts. Around this time, a noted historian of the emotions published a book arguing that, despite appearances, humans today are less isolated than at any previous point in history, a proposition so troubling that she received death threats and was forced into hiding. A movement arose amongst evangelical Christians who congregated in shopping centres offering a free hug from Jesus, the one perfect heart. Months passed. It emerged that the private collector was a billionaire self-help entrepreneur. In the foreword to his book, Love Won't Choose You, But You Can Choose Love, he revealed that he had destroyed the heart because it symbolised the epidemic of need thinking that had dragged him lucratively from retirement. From a safe house, the historian of the emotions counted 179 new religious movements associated with the cult of the perfect heart. And meanwhile, people continue to love and be loved, but not everyone, and not enough, and never quite in the way they imagined. Sometimes only grief made them notice. More things were forgotten than were ever wished for. There were also mornings, and some of them felt new. This is called What the Funeral Director Knows. Her daughter Ruth said she lived too long. Perhaps it was true. Perhaps it was true. Ruth said she was a widow for 40 years. Ruth said she was never naked with anyone in 40 years. Perhaps it was true. Look after her, Ruth said. Excuse me. Oops. What the funeral director knows is beyond private. What she knows is that we all die between blinks. She knows that care is industry and that ultimately only the outward forms of respect matter. Kyle, her assistant, is 17. He makes jokes about necrophilia. He is afraid, but he doesn't know it. It is too soon to tell him. Together, they take years off her, as if that mattered now. Her face is edited. The hardest thing is knowing what questions not to ask. Kyle is a little in love with the funeral director, who knows that everything is someone's job. People say that young people think themselves immortal. This isn't true. Kyle tells people he had a brother who drowned. It started as a lie, but sometimes he forgets. It is an explanation for something he has always felt. Sometimes he closes his eyes and he is swimming. The water is the colour of embalming fluid. He is going to live forever. Breathless. Exact. The funeral director gets her ex-husband drunk because she can. Ruth is angry about the flowers. She feels angry because she feels guilty. And she feels guilty because once she accepts that it's all her fault, she doesn't have to fight anymore. What the funeral director knows this morning is that she is still drunk. She excuses herself as gently as she can, leaving Ruth with Kyle. Ruth asks Kyle about his parents. It is not a gentle thing. She is accusing him of having lost no one. He tells her about his brother. This makes her feel guilty again. It turns out that was the right thing to do. When the funeral director returns, she apologizes. The funeral director buys Kyle fish and chips because he is not her ex-husband. Sometimes he is swimming in embalming fluid, breathless, exact. He smells of formaldehyde and methanol, but what he smells is vinegar. He squeezes 3 fat chips into his mouth. Then, with his little finger, he makes 2 little eye holes in the batter so the haddock can observe his finless, shallow water cousins. The funeral director laughs, tossing her head back to make it perfect. This one. What should I do now? Thank you very much. I think I'm going to do one called Do Invisible Zebras Have Stripes? Excuse the stagecraft, it's not very professional, I do not mind. You look at other parents with their kids and it looks natural. Then you think of the way you have to squeeze love from yourself like the last juice from a lemon, how it always comes but not willingly. How even then you think it isn't the real thing, like you always thought with women, but it is the real thing. It couldn't be more real, and probably that's why you struggle with it. She's climbing the stairs and you know she's proud because you begged her to climb them when she found it hard, and now she knows she can and she trusts you to be pleased every time. But you aren't ready to be pleased. You're still cursing the woman in the downstairs flat who leaves her bins in the hall, forcing you to shuffle them about to park the pushchair. Then, she says of the downstairs woman, she's not a normal person, which is taken from what you said, and she trusts you to be pleased again. But actually you're ashamed because the woman thinks she is disabled, and even if you think she could get around fine if she wanted to, you don't really know. And even if it is in her head, something made her feel like that. So who are you to judge her? Who are you to teach a 3-year-old to judge her? She is learning about shame at nursery, where they call out to you as you collect her that she is dirty and needs a wash. You tell her she is not dirty. She is still a tiger, and in return she tells you that your dark skin isn't dirty, it's just instead of sun cream. You never made peace with anything except with words, so it seems cruel to you to leave fears unnamed once they have entered her world. Your mother, who spends more time cleaning your flat than playing with her granddaughter, and always used to say of her brown children that at least no one could say they weren't clean, your mother would be horrified by the dirty face and the talk about feelings. And in truth, you are horrified too. You are just forcing what you hope is the right thing. You are thinking about these things, and you decide to tell her about the zebra, the special horse that is both black and white. But she has no zebra toy, and she says it must be an invisible zebra. So you tell her the invisible zebra didn't like being invisible because no one would play with it, and no one knew what to do because it was so sad. But then the tiger suggested stripes, and they painted stripes on the zebra, and then everyone could see her, and she was happy. Your daughter won't have it that the zebra was a girl, because everything is a boy except for princesses and cats. Also, she wishes she was invisible, but only sometimes. After she is asleep, you wonder if it is cruel to raise her to demand justice, because so much of the time, if she is fighting for justice, she will be fighting herself. You're like that. You can't stop wanting something better, for her and just as much for yourself. It comes to you very suddenly that she won't learn how to love by watching you. She will learn how to dream and be disappointed. The thought is too terrible to hold on to, even to look at. It slithers off into the night, leaving you staring out of the window at your indigo sky, at your beloved dusk. These are the things we never explain. Sometimes, when Anna drinks, she gets a fierce hunger for life. Or maybe the hunger is always there, but the drink means she gets to know about it. That's when she dances and laughs, and people tell her she is flirting, which is their way of flirting back. Tonight is different. Tonight, she can't feel the promise of submerged things, just the words that belly flop the surface. She doesn't even have much to say, so she just smiles, because it's easier than revealing herself. This means her world is full of Paul's talk. He bores her, and it's her own fault. He doesn't really have a chance. It's too loud in here for anything worth saying. Look at that girl over there. She's drunk and she wants to share, but that's not what's making her stupid. It's the effort of shouting over the music and trying to say everything in the 10 words people can follow before the effort of lip reading and filling in the gaps gets too much. Under the circumstances, the girl is wise to give up on the nuances and get straight to the point. I hate him, she says. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, and her friends drag her off to the dance floor. She doesn't want to go at first, but after a few slurred steps, she's waving her arms in the air and hollering, as if he can see her, as if seeing her he would understand everything and be defeated. Anna smiles at Paul. Paul, who has his back to the girl, smiles at Anna. What is he thinking? He doesn't know if this is going anywhere, and he doesn't know what to do to find out. Perhaps, he thinks, there is a clue in her behaviour that he can't see. There is. The clue is, she is giving him nothing to go on. While he goes to the toilet, she leaves her drink, and his drink, and his phone and his bag on the table and walks straight out. She sends him a text. I'm sorry. She will decide later why she had to leave. Her legs are full of mission, barreling home through the hostile streets, but she forces herself to be aware, as if she doesn't care about the night's threat. She has done a mean thing, and in order to justify it, she needs to be reckless, extreme. She logs the things she would normally be too huddled to notice. The way the two red-haired girls block the pavement with their dance, the stale absence of a breeze, the violence of a single car on a wet road, tearing the night. Beyond the strip, the crowd's thin. Silhouettes of trees imprint the sky. A fox stops to watch her, shockingly unafraid. Her phone vibrates in her hand. She had forgotten it was there. Inevitably, it's Paul. His message reads, sorry for what? She's not sorry for anything. She's sorry about everything, about this life of shortcuts, this desperation to connect. These are the things we never explain. Call me tomorrow, she replies, and she knows he will be encouraged by that and she will have to put a stop to it. She will apologize for being strange. He will accept her apology, and neither of them will be fixed. She only notices at the front door that she has been walking with her arms crossed across her chest. She kept a head full of clamour all the way home. It was only her body that remembered to be scared. She thinks, it doesn't matter what the body knows if the mind doesn't see it. She thinks, perhaps we only invite in the noise to drown out the fear. Fear of assault, fear of exposure, fear of solitude. The next day, Paul rings. I saw you on Facebook half the night, he says. I worried that you had bad news from somewhere. Is everything okay? She feels her arms crossing, turning into armour. She says, yes, everything is fine. She just felt weird, and she wishes she never had to speak to him again. This is called The Prime Minister. He was brave, I'll give him that. He waved away his security and the burly men, discomfited, spoke in her radios as if for something to do, their radios. We were shouting, war criminal, most of us, although other things were being shouted as well. He walked over to us and stood there. There was a silence because, well, what do you say to your enemy when he is right there, defiantly human, in front of you? In that moment, you have to decide whether you hate him, really, when he is there to feel your hatred, when what you feel has a consequence, and you realise that up to that point, you really didn't know what you felt. I knew what I thought, though, so I said to him, in my normal voice, because it was so quiet that I could, when you have made a mistake and people are dying, you have to stop. Probably he wouldn't have answered, but he didn't have a chance, because at that moment a man screamed. The man was yelling something incomprehensible and shielding his eyes as if a powerful light was being aimed right at them. He began sobbing. The security people forgot their radios and rushed forward. The crowd pushed back, and the Prime Minister said, very calmly, to me, that man needs help. Can we help him? The security stepped back and the uniformed police carried the man, still hysterical, from our side of the barrier into the sanctum of power. Almost instantly, paramedics appeared. The man was sedated, and the Prime Minister, hair flapping, a sapling in the forest of goons, said, does anyone know who he is? So we can contact someone. If there were people who knew, they weren't the kind to give it away. But someone must have figured it out because the story broke a few days later. The man's name, which he had chosen for himself, was Dylan Rossi. As he was happy to tell journalists, when he looked at the Prime Minister, he saw the reptilian eyes of a monster. Very real. Manifest. The Prime Minister, who was everywhere lauded for his courage and compassion, appeared on breakfast television to caution against the impact of intense political enthusiasm on vulnerable minds. A few days later, he ordered the assault. It felt inevitable. and most people liked it that way because it spared them. Even I felt drained of anger. I thought more and more about the man who gave the order and the mystery of human behavior. Nothing good felt possible, and that was my way of reaching as deep as I dared into the fog of war, groping at something to believe. Okay, that's me done. Next up is the extraordinary Layla King. Stay around for that. I'll see you around. Bye.